Hi folks, welcome back to the shop. Today I want to talk about air chucks. More specifically, air chucks with tire pressure gauge integrated, right? Or some people call them tire inflators with tire pressure gauge. Now we all know the standard sort of air chuck and how that works, right? You're going to go over to your tire, you're going to grab your tire, you're going to air it up, a little bit of air, drop that, check your PSI, back to the chuck. More air, check the pressure, right? A process, you're constantly switching back and forth. And one day I was at a friend's house and I saw that he had an integrated, this tire pressure gauge integrated with air chuck, right? Got your gauge here with chuck, and I thought, wow, that looks really neat. Should work great. Now the idea behind this is you can put this on the tire, and even if it's unhooked, it'll tell you you can use it just as a pressure gauge and check the pressure of the tire, right? And you put this on and it shows you the pressure, you squeeze the trigger, airs up the tire, you let off to read the gauge again, and it tells you the pressure, and you air up some more. It has a relief valve here, so if you're trying to drain some air out or get some air out of the tire, if you overinflated it, just pull this trigger in and that will let some air escape. Now this, I liked it when I used it at first. I thought it worked pretty good. But then I noticed that, of course, it works great with a car tire or a truck tire that's tubeless, and the valve stem is fixed in the wheel. Not so great when you're in a situation where you are trying to air up a tire that has a tube in it. You have to, this thing is a two-handed operation tool, right? You squeeze the trigger, you hold the chuck on. So when you get in here and you're grabbing this tube tire and you're holding on the chuck, right? Well, we don't have three ends to run this tool and to squeeze the trigger, right? It quickly becomes a three-handed tool. And I thought, well, gosh, is there a way to improve upon that? We could, of course, change this chuck out, and that would help because it can mount on the valve stem. But it also has this analog meter that, while it works well, when you're trying to inflate tires that are under 20 PSI, right? Let's say it's 8 PSI or so, like you're doing your mower tires, your zero turn, you're trying to put some shock absorption in there and you keep those PSIs around 8 or so. It's hard to read on this meter. So I thought, was there something better? Can we do better than this tool? It was great because this one was inexpensive. So that's when I went out online and I located this inflator or tire pressure gauge and air chuck from AstroAI. And now it came with brass chuck, and another great thing was it came with another chuck, so you have an option here to go with this locking style or this type that threads on the valve stem, right? You can choose between the two. They thread on very easily, and you can just thread this one off, thread this one on. It has a seal inside, so there's no need for Teflon tape. If you want to switch back and forth, you can do that. And of course, with this one, it threads here one-handed. You could thread this on and use this as your chuck. And I've tried both. I got to say that I was using that one that threaded on quite a bit. These chucks can be notorious for leaking, so you just got to make sure it's on there really firm. It has a seal inside in here that you just have to get on tight, and sometimes that can take two hands depending on the scenario. But with this locking chuck, now I can come over here with a tubed tire, and instead of having to hold it the whole time, I can get it on there tight, make sure when we put it on that we're getting it on there tight before we release the lock, right? And now we have a one-handed operation here. And I'll just show you here how this works. Notice there's no reading yet on the display. That's because this tire has really low inflation right now. In fact, it's probably nearly flat. But now I have it on this tire. I'm going to add some air to it. And you see it turns on automatically as soon as it senses some pressure. Now you got to get these chucks on tight. It's kind of hard because this one's, I'm moving around here, but you can see, so now we're getting a reading for the PSI, and as I squeeze the trigger, it'll put some more air in. I let off to get a reading, right? And if I want to release some air, just like on the Merlin from Harbor Freight, squeeze the trigger, if we overinflate, we can let some air out. All right. Need to put air back in it, put the air in it, let off. This one's going to inflate very fast because it's a small tire. If you're not aware, small tires inflate quickly, and typically, of course, they need a low PSI. But you can see it's reading under 10 PSI, accurately, right? And I've tested it. It comes out very well for low PSI. So if you're, say, inflating a tire that needs 8 PSI, you can get it right down to where you need it. You're not fighting an analog gauge, and you can see on the digital gauge exactly what you're looking for there. So great tool, works incredibly well. And as I've stated before, and I'll show you this as well, just to make sure it's clear. I'm sure you probably already got it, but you don't have to have this connected to test the air pressure. So you could just use this as a tire pressure gauge. Of course, this is going to be, that's why sometimes I like to use that threaded chuck. But you know, you can see with it in a disconnected state, I could just use this to check tire inflation by itself without pulling the hose or the air compressor along. So it makes it very convenient. And again, you can, you know, the goal for me anyway is to get down to one tool I use to inflate that I can grab every time. I don't have to think about it. You know, when I had that Harbor Freight inflator with gauge, I had the challenge of going between tools, and that's no good, right? Using a traditional air chuck and using this. And this, in this case, you can use this all the time. Now, one thing between these two inflators that I do like better about the Merlin from Harbor Freight is I do like the hose better on this one. Like you can see here, the Merlin hose is very thick ply. It's straight right out the shelf. It was straight. This one has some memory in it from, I guess, shipping, and it's not quite as and maybe that's a desirable feature. The hose on here is just it's not quite as stout, not quite as thick lined. And it might make it more flexible. I would definitely say it makes it more flexible if you're getting into a tight area or a tight spot. But that is one thing I definitely like better about the hose on the Merlin from Harbor Freight. But yeah, with that, it's just a quick word on tire and pressure, tire inflator with gauge, or tire chuck with gauge. You know, I've seen them referred to different ways. Yeah, this is an excellent tool, works great, relatively inexpensive, and as I said earlier, it's really a nice feature that they send along either chuck, both chucks with it, and you can switch at your will and pick the one you like the best. With that said, I'd appreciate if you'd like and subscribe. If you have any items you like better than this, a inflator with gauge you like better than this, please leave it in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.